Welcome back to the Control Academy, everyone. I'm your host, Marshall, and today we're playing Bant Control in Explorer. So, we've gone through a bunch of different control combinations, and we took a little bit of a detour last week with mono red control. Not everyone liked that deck, that's fine, but today we're going to dive in and try some stuff that I think is going to be a little bit more generally appealing, so to speak. As a reminder, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you like what we're doing here, creating a new control deck every single week and playing it on Arena, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I keep doing this every week. I've been doing it for over 200 days now. I recently just posted to the Twitter account for Control Academy some of the stats and how the channel's grown over those first 200 days. Feels like it was just yesterday, and you know, it's coming along. I'm still a new creator, and so every subscription counts, and if you give me a chance to sort of prove my worth in your sub box, I hope to justify it to you retroactively. But anyway, enough about that. The deck today is Bant Control. Blue, white, green, I guess it's the Brokers and New Capenna. That's all good. And so this follows a similar playbook to a lot of the decks we've played recently, in that we've got Teferi, because of course we do. We've got the Wandering Emperor, because again, of course we do. Shark Typhoon is great. You'll notice we have fewer of those, and I'll talk about some of the things that we're doing instead of that. And we've got probably one of the better Wrath packages, at least until Supreme Verdict is put into Arena's version of Pioneer. Now, the things we're doing a little bit differently in some of these cases, that first, we have Kaheera the Orphanguard as a companion, just because it's functionally free. Since we're running a 60 card deck and we're not using this for Yorion, you know, we may as well go have a 3/2 Vigilance for 3 just on hand at any given time. Most matches we probably won't use this, but sometimes just being able to guarantee that we have something to attack with is worthwhile there. Kaheera is one of the ones that, especially in a deck with very few main deck creatures, you can slot Kaheera into pretty much anything. So there we go. We've got that companion out of the way. We've played March of Otherworldly before. I've got up to 4 here because it's really, really strong, especially in the current format, and exiling is very relevant. I'm running Censor. In a lot of the other decks I've been playing, I've been putting this in as Jawari Disruption, and that may still be right here, honestly, but the cycling on this makes it really easy to justify, and this deck has a couple of tools that make mana less of an issue, so the card draw ends up being more relevant, so to speak, than the extra land count than normal. So here I've gone with Censor. I like it fair enough. It's not amazing, it's not awful. It occupies that sort of beautiful middle ground that Jawari Disruption did, of being just good enough. Dovin's Veto we've played before, but now we get into the spicy green stuff. So Growth Spiral becomes a card draw spell that is worth spending some time on. So in previous decks, like the Esper one, we played things like Tainted Indulgences, which let you draw 2 and then discard 1 unless you have a certain number of mana values in the graveyard. Growth Spiral is always just 1 card, but then you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So if you've kept a land heavy opener, or if you've been flooding out a little bit, this becomes a ramp spell, and it becomes a way to get a little bit ahead in those mirrors that matter, or a way to sort of get to that Wrath a little bit early with basically no downside. Like the worst case scenario is just 2 mana draw a card. That's not bad, but the potential upside of getting to our sort of sweet spot of 4 mana early is pretty relevant. And down here in the 2-drop slot, something that we will never cast as a 2-drop is Hydroid Krasis. It says a Jellyfish Hydra Beast, and that means it does comply with Kaheera. And we've got 2 copies of this, again, because it's not really a 2-drop. But Hydroid Krasis was amazing in its standard format, and it turns out that it's still really good in Explorer. Because when you go ahead and cast it, you gain half X life and draw half X cards, where X is the additional mana in addition to the blue and green you spend. And that is a on-cast ability, meaning that whether or not the creature resolves or stays on the battlefield, you are going to get that. So as a way to just sort of shore up our life totals, like even early on, just, casting it for, 4 mana can just get us a little bit of life in a card. That's not awful. But in the late game, where if we've managed to really stockpile mana and get ahead in that way, we can make this thing huge, draw a lot of cards, gain a lot of life. It can really swing the battle back. And then once you get past that cast ability, it's a flying trample XX, where it's as big as the X's you put, the mana you put into it. And so Hydroid Krasis is really great as a main deck beat stick, as a way to sort of shift the tide of battle back in our way, and I've been really enjoying it in this deck. Endless Detour is replacing Absorb in this deck, and there are arguments why that may or may not be correct, but here I like Endless Detour a lot because it lets you put a target spell, non-land permanent, or a card in a graveyard on either the top or bottom of your opponent's library. And the flexibility of this is really incredible, because first, it's not actually a counter spell, so it can actually get around things like Dovin's Veto and whatnot, and take whatever spell was being affected by something that is uncounterable or whatnot, and just deal with that. It goes back to the top of their deck or their bottom of their deck, depending on the opponent's preference, which means that it's either clogging up their draw or it's functionally countered, and so that's pretty great. The choice is on your opponent's side, so that isn't perfect, but it's pretty good here. But the fact that this can also bounce something problematic from the board is really great too, because there's some times where you really want to extend into a threat, and then they resolve something in that window where you would have otherwise countered it, and then this lets you go ahead and still take it off the battlefield anyway. So it's good even if you miss the perfect timing for it. And then with things like Greasefang in the format, being able to just sort of surreptitiously snipe something out of someone's graveyard is pretty great, especially since it comes at no cost essentially. So I love Endless Detour. It's a little tough on the mana base, but as an Absorb impersonator, it is really great. Again, it doesn't do exactly the same thing as Absorb. It doesn't gain us life, and it is only putting things off for so long, but it's still really strong, and I like it. We've played Depopulate, we've played Wandering Emperor, we've played Memory Deluge, not a lot to say here. We've played Teferi, and then up here in the 5-drop slot, we've also got Nissa, Who Shakes the World. Now this kind of gets us into the game that makes Hydroid Krasis really great. It's a win con on its own, in that Nissa's static is whenever you tap a forest for a mana, you get an additional green mana. So that's pretty great. We've gone ahead and doubled our mana right off the bat. And if we've ramped to get to Nissa, we can potentially get a huge mana advantage really early. And her plus is pretty solid as well. So if you put 3 +1/+1 counters on target non-creature land you control, untap it, it becomes an elemental creature with vigilance and haste that's still a land. So this can be a way to close out the game, in that we can turn our lands into creatures and start attacking in. And that's really powerful. If we can get her up to 8 mana, we get to have indestructible lands, which makes her plus even better. And then we search our library for any number of forests and put them on the battlefield tap, then shuffle. Realistically, I don't see that happening very often. It's 3 pluses to get to it. And so, if we get there, we get there. If we don't, we don't. But it's not something we inherently expect to do, because 3 turns is a lot of time for a sort of premium planeswalker like this to sit out on the board. But either way, hopefully, we get to really cream some people with lands from this. And this is part of the reason that we can afford to use things like Censor instead of the flip lands that get us more mana, because we get to a certain point where between Growth Spiral and Nissa, we can get a mana advantage pretty easily, honestly. So Nissa is probably one of the more experimental cards of this deck, but her floor is real high, so I'm excited to have her in the deck. Up here in the 6-drop slot, I mentioned Farewell, I mentioned Shark Typhoon. We're running only 2 Shark Typhoons, and there's an argument that this should be more. There just comes a point where it's tough to fit everything into this deck that I want to fit into it. There's an argument to go down either Censors or Marches to fit in the last 2 Shark Typhoons, but I've been running it with 2, and it's pretty decent. I'm not upset with it. The mana base won't surprise you. We got Castle Ardenvale, we've got basics, we've got creature lands, we've got the channel lands, with Boseiju being particularly relevant with the number of enchantments that are floating around, and then the rest are just the usual suspects. And it's important to recognize that the forest type line is useful here, so that's why we have Temple Garden, which I might not always put into, at least in this quantity of a deck, because we want to make sure that we have enough cards in our mana base with forest in the type line to be able to take advantage of that plus, because things like Boseiju obviously are not going to take advantage of that, even though they produce green mana. In the sideboard, we've got Rest in Peace, we've got Narset, we've got Yasharn, we've got Hullbreaker Horror. Yasharn is unusually useful because there's plenty of different sacrifice decks, and Yasharn just says you can't do that. And then at bare minimum, he tutors us up some lands, and that's been really great. I like Yasharn a lot in this deck. Hullbreaker Horror does require us to take Kaheera out if we put it in the main deck, but in the matchups where it matters, it's still worth doing. Ether Gust is a really great sideboard card, but it has to live in the sideboard because it's a little bit too narrow to main deck. Damping Sphere comes in the situations where we have opponents that want to sling spells, so this is things like Phoenix that we want to punish them for trying to cast multiple things in a turn. Mystical Dispute is coming in against opposing blue decks, and then we've got 2 Narsets that help us dig for answers again in grindier matchups. And anyway, so that's the deck. We're going to play best of 3 today and see how this goes. It takes a little bit more time to record best of 3, so I'm a little nervous about getting everything done in time. But I think this deck has a lot of game, and I hope you're excited to see it. See you there. All right, first up, Azorius Cub, using the Ral Avatar. Wonder if they're going to be tricking us up. We get to play, which is really great. This opening hand it's okay. It's not amazing. Growth Spiral makes it keepable, and if I were to mull this to 6, I'd be happy to keep this hand if it only had 1 memory to lose, so I may as well keep the second one. The fact that it's got a March makes this a little bit more palatable, and so we'll hopefully draw into something to help close things out, but we'll see. With the center tapped. I apologize if there's a little bit more background noise than usual because it is approximately 1,000,000 degrees here in Illinois, and so I have to have my overhead fan on or I'm literally going to die of heat stroke. So I'm going to edit out as much of that as I can in post, but if I don't succeed in that endeavor, please accept my sincerest apologies. Alright, so we got Growth Spiral. We're up to 3 mana. If we draw a land, then hey, we're already in good shape. So we're going to pay the 2 life on this and then pass. We've got removal. We drew an Endless Detour. That's really great. We can Memory Deluge if they don't do anything. Our opponent is on Esper, so I suspect that this is going to get grindy. But now that I have seen how this hand is sort of drawn out, I actually expect this to work really nicely in our favor. We've already got a mana advantage. Our opponent wants to grind, and so as long as we keep drawing like this, we're currently sitting pretty nicely. And if our opponent wants to tap out and counter this, then that's also totally fine. So here, this is not necessarily the most amazing thing we could have gotten. I'm going to grab a Hallowed Fountain, and the question is, do I want a second March or a Temple Garden? And I think I'm actually going to take a Temple Garden because I think we need to manage our resource advantage here. It feels weird grabbing 2 lands with that, but I think that is the right answer. Here it is tempting to try to Windmill Slam it to Teferi, but if they have a counterspell, then we're in a tough spot next turn. And so in this case, I'm just going to sit back on endless detour removal, and then if they don't do anything, we've got another Memory Deluge. So this game, like previous control mirrors that we've played on the channel, really is going to hinge on kind of who taps out first. And because we have this huge mana advantage, we don't have to tap out quite as aggressively because we've got extra mana. And so really we want to just use their end step to fire off things that'll tempt them to be naughty, and just let them sort of give us the advantage. Dovin's Veto is incredible here for the fact that it can't be countered, so we can just end counter wars. And then Hydroid Krasis, we already have plenty of lands in hand from the last one, so there's no reason to go too nuts on those. So going up to 6 mana is not super relevant right now, so I am going to drop Aspara's Headquarters. Oops, apologize for the extra sound there. And then I'm going to pass. Really just looking for them to give me an opening to cause them pain. There we go. Forgot to turn my light on. All right, so now here, I don't really have anything we can do. No reason to force anything, so we'll just untap. Castle Ardenvale is good because now we'll always have something we can do in their end step, and now we have enough mana to Memory Deluge again. So just trying to win the standoff here, and the fact that we're already 2 lands ahead is pretty decent. Well, 1 land if they don't miss their next land drop, but there's an argument for buying Kaheera here, but given that we already have a couple different threat options, I'm not too worried about it. Well, they got a shark out, so that's pretty good for them. I'm not super worried yet. One, we can answer it for a single mana with March of Otherworldly Light, which is probably what I'm going to do here. X is 0, confirm 0, submit 0. Goodbye, shark. If they want to fight over a shark, then that's fine by me. We can certainly accommodate that. They are thinking very hard about whether or not they want to do something about it. So we won't be able to Memory Deluge this turn, that's fine. So let's go ahead and just make a little dude. Not as exciting as a shark, but it'll do. Glacial Fortress. Go to combat. Attack. Alright, so now we're at 8 mana, which means that we can Teferi, leave up Dovin's Veto, and then as long as Teferi resolves, then we can have between 3 and 5 mana going to their turn. So this is where I'm going to try to take advantage of the fact that we're so far ahead on mana. See what happens. Zorb. Saw that coming. And so this is where, you know, if they have another counter, well, they don't. So that was a risk, but again, we were so far ahead on mana, we have enough answers it was a reasonable enough risk. Now they do destroy Teferi, and that's annoying, but we've cost them a fair number of resources in the process. So go ahead and untap like this. Now they've got a Narset, which how do I want to handle this? Because you could detour it and go from there. I think I'm going to detour. I'm going to see if I can get them to fight over it, because then we can get a Krasis out, and we won't be able to draw off Krasis if they do actually resolve a Narset. But let's see if we can get them to tap lower, so we can get Chonkosaurus, Hydroid Krasis out. Okay, so Hallowed Fountain, pay 2 life, go to combat. Void Rend is such a good card. I love it. Alright, so now we've got 9 mana, so we can cast this for up to X equals 7. If we cast it for... I want to make sure I at least leave up Endless Detour, like full stop. So here, I want to spend 6 mana on it, so X is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Auto pay lets me leave a Bant mana. Perfect. We'll draw 2. Alright. Memory Deluge. I think I need to let them have this. The letting them grab 2 is not ideal. But okay, now we've got 2 pretty solid things there, but being able to go into their next turn. Okay, never mind. Not going into the next turn. Okay, cool. So the Mystical Disputes are great here. We can have our own Narsets. I don't think we need anything else there. I think Hullbreaker Horror comes in, which is going to, I believe, require that Kaheera comes out. So there's that. The things that are less good. Depopulate comes out. Farewell comes out. And I think... So the Wandering Emperor is tempting because they have fewer targets for a minus, but she is a decent threat. I do think that that's the right answer there. So how do I feel about this main deck? We've got counters, we've got answers, we've got ways to dig. I think it's good enough. Please let me know how you would have sideboarded in the comments. It's been a while actually since I played Best of 3, so I'm not even going to pretend that I'll get it right every single time. We've been playing Commander for the FNMs I run here in the Chicago area. Come on out to Gamers World Fox Valley if you're in the Chicago area, and come jam some EDH on Friday nights. And because I'm playing Best of 1 in Standard and Explorer for the most part, don't actually use a sideboard much for anything other than tutoring these days. Alright, and we're back for game 2. We'll see how this goes after opponent has a chance to sideboard. Alright, well, that wasn't how I expected to win that match. But there we go. First V in the bag. Alright, next up, Soupman. That's an interesting username. I'll take it. Alright, we are not going to get to choose player draw this game, but, and of course, we're on the draw. This opener is, it's like aggressively okay. If our opponent is on a control deck, then it's fine. If our opponent is playing creatures, It's not that great. But we got 2 redraws, and we have the potential to ramp up. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. I'll take a... Okay, of course they're creatures. So, getting punished right away. But hey, you know, good learning experience. Rotting Regisaur. Well, that is indeed a thing, but at least we drew a Depopulate. So that is a good enough start, even though we're going to get hurt very badly. Hopefully we'll be able to rip a land off of this growth spiral, so that way we can hit 4 next turn and just Wrath right away. My hope is that our opponent just like overextends and this pain gets stemmed pretty quickly, but that seems like it might be a little optimistic. Alright, growth spiral. Hey, it's a land. Let's go ahead and drop that into play. Enters tapped. Alright, follow-up Wrath is almost as good as the first Wrath. So, let's go ahead and blow things up. They got Heroic Intervention. Okay, good. Rotting Regisaur is pretty darn good. I forgot that card was a thing, but in black-green aggro, I can imagine it being pretty solid. Thoughtseize, alright. I imagine Farewell is going bye-bye here. No, they want to get rid of Teferi. Interesting choice. Not the one I would have expected. Let's Growth Spiral here, see if we can rip a land. We did not. That's fine. With them not having anything on board, the the upside of getting to 5 there would have been really worthwhile. This is play tapped and pass. Between Endless Detour and Wandering Emperor, we're doing okay. Let's go ahead and... It's always weird to me that for some reason it always starts Endless Detour in their graveyard. It always just makes me sort of wig out a little bit internally. So there you go. Sparta's Headquarters is fine. And now they're going to redraw that Gargaroth, which is fine. Mostly just trying to keep them off of things. Yeah. Pop off. So when it attacks or blocks, they get to do a thing. Yep. And importantly, is it does not care about Wandering Emperor because it has vigilance. It doesn't tap. So I'm just going to pay 5. Yes, 5 into this. X is 5. We'll exile Dovin's Veto. There's a chance that they have Collected Company, but like given how many like big chonky things they've got going on, I don't see that being super relevant. So we'll go ahead and do that. The reason I am doing that rather than Farewell is I want to see them dump a little bit more into the battlefield before I commit to a Farewell. And because Wandering Emperor can't deal with Gargaroth, I want to deal with that there. There's a chance that like they're gonna play a Collected Company here, and I'll be like, if only I had the Dovin's Veto. But in reality, I've got Farewell, and they know about it too. So like, hopefully this just kind of keeps them Titan of Industry. Yikes. All right, that's a thing that may force my hand a little bit depending on what they do. Anyway, as I was saying, yeah, so they know I've got the Farewell, so they're playing around it. And if they play Coco, then Collected Company, then Farewell sort of deals with that quite nicely too. So here, I'm actually going to make a human. This does not have vigilance, so I don't care about it quite as much. So here, I can actually play Nissa, then plus On Temple Garden, I've got a 3/3, and now I have enough mana open to Wandering Emperor, the Titan of Industry, and block the Rhino. So, going to not attack, end turn. They don't know about the Emperor, so... At the beginning of combat, each turn +1 creature you control. Then if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, you may play the card. Okay, well, that might end poorly for me. We'll see. Titan of Industry does go pretty well with fight raking. I'll give him that. Right, Fatal Push on the land. That is annoying, but fine. We still have enough for the Wandering Emperor, so not too worried yet. Oh, they had waited another fight rigging. Come at me, bro. Okay, so Wandering Emperor says no way, Jose. It does not care about your shield counter. And then the little human just gets in the way. And then we'll very conveniently depopulate. Cancel this because I can actually plus on Asparta's headquarters and then give it a +1/+1 counter. And then go to combat, attack, and by Kaheera, cast Kaheera. Okay. Well, without creatures on their side of the battlefield, it'll be a little bit of time before they can make use of that hideaway. And I can actually end either or both of them with that, so I don't know how I want to do that. They're going to scoop it up anyway. We got there. GG. Alright, our opponent's playing creatures. It's not clear to me that your Sharn is going to be super useful here, but Aether Gust might be. So we're going to keep Aether Gust, or take Aether Gust rather. This isn't super relevant. Honestly, our main deck is pretty decent against this already. The real question is, do we want Yasharn? It gets us lands, which is one thing. It'll block against things. And do they have things that they care about sacrificing? I didn't really see enough of that to like confidently lean into this, so I'm not going to. I will take out the Dovin's Veto, because Aether Gust will be a little more useful there. And then I'll go down a single Teferi, because it's a little bit too slow. And I think that that's all the change we need to make. Like, it's possible that we'll see a different theme in the next game that'll point me in a different direction. Whether Yasharn or Rest in Peace is useful, but I think we kind of just have to make the game happen approximately like that again. Which is funny, because that opening hand was not what I would have expected to be good against what our opponent was doing, but we drew basically just what we needed. So opponent's on the play, not shocking. And then this opening hand is pretty darn good for what we need to do. We need to draw some lands, but we've got Aether Gust to sort of buy us a little bit of time. So I like this. I like this a lot. I do need a second white mana. Hey, there we go. Second white mana right on cue. Didn't even need to ask for it. Alright, there's a Thoughtseize. Curious to see what they'll take there. Hydroid Krasis is a good thing to take. Depopulate would probably be my call. I guess knowing nothing about their hand. Aether Gust is good, but it only, sort of delays the inevitable to a certain degree. And they're black-green, so not everything works. Depopulate, I think, was the right call there. here, since they already know about the lands, I'll go ahead and play basic plains. This lets us leave up Ether Gust and Boseiju. And since Castle Ardenvale isn't going to be activated anytime soon anyway, may as well just leave them wondering about that last one. And they scoop it up. Yet another game that I didn't quite expect to go that way, but in that one we were paired up, so, you know, this wasn't an opponent who did know their stuff. Alright, GG. Alright, next up is Bane. Good luck, Bane. Hey, we get to be on the play. That's a good place to start. And this hand is miserable. If we had even one more land, I might chance it, because, like, if I knew that the top card of my library was, like, a breeding pool or something, like, this is a pretty nuts combination of things, but if we don't draw a land, we're just dead. So, mulligan. This is better. Not by, like, leaps and bounds, but it is better. So I'll keep this. I'm going to send Teferi back, since it's the slowest. Everything else is at least castable with the hand we have already. So, drop Asparas and pass a turn. What are you up to, Bane? What do you got for me? Hallowed Fountain. Alright, so we might be in the control mirror. I'm going to play the Nether Sparrows here. In worst case scenario, we can still march, but just seeing Hallowed Fountain doesn't tell me quite enough about what we need to see. The nice thing about playing a different control deck every week is that inevitably I get a little bit further from the meta every single time, and so people are probably kind of guessing wildly about what on earth it is I'm doing over here. So they see Bant colors, but that doesn't mean they have any idea what to expect. We're going to pass. I'm probably going to Shark Typhoon for 1 at the end of their turn, just to start churning through the deck, but now we're leaving up March, we're leaving up Endless Detour. I like where we're at. Our set. So here's my options. I can Krasis. I won't be able to draw, but then I'll have a Krasis. I can detour the Narset, and that'll set them back. I think that's probably actually the best option. Making them redraw the Narset is pretty decent, all things considered. Not the best. Like, I'm not going to pretend that it's some amazing next level play that I've come up with. Let's go ahead and cast this for 2. Now, this is me kind of like going against my whole gunslinger approach of these sort of control mirrors, but guessing that there's almost certainly a Narset coming means that I feel a little bit probably more safe than I should, and getting out of threat now that draws us a card, gains us a little bit of life, is ultimately good, especially since that card draw is going to be lost. So now, smartly, they are not attacking, or they did not activate their Narset, because they know that I'm going to be able to beat down into it. Now, they've got 1 mana available, so the real question is, have they packed their main deck Mystical Disputes?
I must stay.
And if so, this is an awful play. If not, then it's pretty good. Alright. I'll take it.
We need to move quickly.
Okay, we didn't get the card draw, but that's okay. We'll get there. Our opponent is on Azorius without Yorion, which is actually okay. Like, I think Yorion is a little overrated right now, but that's just me. My turn. Ooh, Emperor's not bad here. Oh, plus Teferi. We still don't get a card draw. We're not going to get a card draw even if we do attack, just because of this, but now we go to combat. We attack. And we wait. Okay, so this is free. Oh, submit 0. There you go. And now I'm safe to do this.
I'm not overconfident. You're just underwhelming. I have got new moves.
My mind needs a rest.
And now our opponent doesn't know that we don't have anything to do with this 2 mana, but they don't need to know that. Okay, they're not quite at the point where they can use the Hall of Storm Giants, but that's what I got to keep an eye on. Keeping the Boseiju for that purpose would have been relevant, I suppose, but live and learn. Narset number 2. Do I care? Because I can Shark. I'm going to hold on to the Shark Typhoon.
Past, present, and future are bound by threads of time.
The fact that they're not digging with these Narsets is pretty A-okay in my book, honestly. Pretty A-okay. Okay, my turn. Another march is not awful. Put another counter on this. Unfortunately, it's still not enough to kill the opposing Narset, but let's see. There's an argument that I should have just been attacking their face this entire time, and I'm willing to take that criticism. Primarily because, like, you know, the amount of damage I've now stacked on Narsets would have me pretty close to winning the game, but we'll see. Keeping them from digging with the Narset is a pretty big game here. And I mean, ultimately, it would be really great to be able to draw cards again soon. March of Otherworldly Light. Access 2, they're going to be able to do that. And they exile from hand. What did they exile? Absorb. Interesting. Interesting. What else do they have? Dovin's Veto? Yeah, you can have it. I can't do anything about it anyway, but there's that. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back in their library. Worst case scenario, if they try to attack in with a Hall of Storm Giants, I can make a Shark and or a 1/1, and this gives me a chance to at least start drawing cards, makes them commit resources. They won't actually see that Narset for a while, so yeah, there you go. And actually, this March is really great against Hall of Storm Giants because I completely forget sometimes that it's a 1 mana answer to the creature lands as well. With the, you know, trick with Hall of Storm Giants, you still have to pay the ward cost, so there's that. But they're not making me do it, not putting me to the test, so let's go ahead and make a 3/3 Shark. Nissa's a good draw there. Okay. Bye, Teferi. So, the real question is, what's the last card there? Because
I have got new moves to teach you.
if it's a counterspell, then I don't really want to cast Nissa here. If it's not a counterspell, then this is actually a pretty good call right here. So, kind of have to make that call. I think at this point I kind of have to just deal with a counter or not. I suspect that there's a memory coming soon regardless. So let's see what happens. Commit to Memory is a good card. Actually, that would be pretty decent in this deck too. Explorer is just so fun because like there's so many of these things that like I just forget about because the card pool's getting, you know, big enough. But like the power level is still like flat enough that like you don't have these cases like in Modern where like, you know, it's close to impossible to justify some of these more edgy cases. So that was a good call on their part. I would have waited until I activated Nissa to do that, but to each their own. Because now I don't lose anything by turning on this Sparrows, and I can now leave up 3 mana, which to my opponent could be basically anything. So it's kind of like with the creature lands, is that in that case they could have used that with the, what do you want to call it, the ability from Nissa on the stack, and they would have just been so much more impactful, but they didn't, so bummer. Okay, that memory would be pretty good for them. That is 100% true. Be pretty good for me too, honestly. Now the trick here is I don't actually have enough mana to pay the tax on the ward here, so we're gonna see what they choose to do. I may have to just sacrifice a land here. Here so I can get up to 3 mana total, but I need 1 of it to pay for the march in the first place. So the ward 3 is the challenge. Again, the question is, do I sacrifice Nissa or do I sacrifice the creature? I think I need to just let Nissa die. No blocks. Part of this is that if they commit, then I get the Nissa back in. I've got another one in the deck anyway. Like, it's not really the end of the world in any case. I'm gonna put a +1/+1 counter on the land. Go to combat, attack. Then I've got access to 5-6 mana total. I think I just pass. Leave up March. They're probably going to try to go with the Hall of the Storm Giants again. If they don't, then I can Memory to Luge. Alright, let's go ahead and see if this works. Wandering Emperor, okay. They can exile my shark, I suppose.
Who harms my people must contend with me.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's not great, but
You are not much
it's
of a
fine.
roadblock.
All right. So Teferi is good, and And then I think Endless Detour is the call. Fateful Absence. No. Float 2 mana. Oh, I don't have Nissa anymore. What am I doing? Float white mana. That is annoying because now I can't Teferi. Alright, this game isn't over. My turn. Alright, now I can Teferi. Take 2 life. Draw a card. Double Endless Detour would be a heck of a lot better if I had...
May your blade strike true.
Let's see. If I had another mana. Okay, cool. Got a little worried there for a second. So they're probably going to come at me with the Hall of Storm Giants again. In which case I'm just chumping with a Samurai. This has been a pretty grindy game. Alright, there's memory. I think... yeah, they're not going to be able to do a whole lot. So, hand and graveyard into the library, then draws 7 cards. Yeah, let's hope for a good 7. That's not awful. It's a lot of land. But one of them's a Hall of the Storm Giants, so there's only so much I can complain about. Yeah, I'm not thrilled about it. I'm going to growth spiral here and hope for the best. Fateful Absence. Yeah, not a lot I can do about that, unfortunately.
Let me know if you're up for round 2.
Now my opponent's tapped out, so they...
Our swords will cross again.
Yeah, cashing that in. They curious about what they got. Let's growth spiral. Put it in the hall. Getting a march there is pretty good, actually. And now we get to Teferi again anyway. Let's go ahead and put a +1/+1 counter on this guy.
Remember your training.
Attack. Then I'll go ahead and play Teferi. Plus.
Let's slow this down. We need to move quickly.
Let's see. Have I played a land this turn? Guess maybe I haven't. Yeah. There we go. And enter. Untap this and get some green mana just to keep him guessing. I actually only have 1 green source now. That's... well, okay, never mind. I got plenty in hand. What am I talking about? It's kind of funny that this deck, I kind of built it with building a mana advantage in mind, and then have largely not benefited from that in this particular game. I guess I've lost a couple lands in the process, but it's been a bit tougher. Do I care about 2 damage on Teferi? Right now I do not. I think this March is more important to hold on to for that Hall of Storm Giants. Alright, my turn. Let's go ahead and draw some cards. Courtesy of our opponent. Yeah, I've had worse. I was wondering if they were going to do something like that.
I've learned much during my travels.
Yeah, that's fine.
Guards, to me.
Totally fine. Still got 3 mana up, so it's not the greatest situation in the world.
Keep up the pace.
Nissa's solid here. Happy to see that. Let's go ahead and drop a breeding pool. And then, so if I play this, I need to use both of my green mana, so I can't do anything like Hydroid Krasis or Endless Detour. If I march and farewell, so if I farewell, I'll have 2 mana left up, untap to have 4. That's not the worst play ever. Let's see, what's in my graveyard? Just a Teferi and Growth Spiral in their graveyard. Not really a ton. Seems like a weird time to farewell. But maybe it's the right call? Maybe... Or do I try to do a gigantic Hydroid Krasis? Let's try that. X is 5. Auto pay. Okay, next, I'll have to discard a bunch of cards here, which is... Oh, did I forget to activate the Wandering Emperor? I did. But that's fine, I can do that now. So, create a Samurai. Resolve. And I just realized I didn't leave up enough mana to properly farewell our Temple Garden, Breeding Pool, and Breeding Pool. I didn't leave enough mana to march a Hall of Storm Giants, so we'll see how much that comes back to bite me. Discarding a bunch of forests there is actually a bit, just a little bit problematic in the sense that I realize Nissa gets a lot better if I have more forests, and I only have 1 actual forest on the battlefield right now. So that was probably a mistake, but at least I got another breeding pool in hand. Actually a little mad at myself. I realized I don't have a basic forest in the deck, and there really should be at least 1 of them in there. Resolve. Yeah, unfortunately I'm just gonna have to let this come at me. Needed 1 more mana. But oh well. Yeah, that's fine.
I have got new moves.
Block it with the Samurai, and then, you know, eat something with the Krasis if they come out with a move more than that. Okay, 2 blockers. Block. Block. 2 damage on the Emperor doesn't really matter.
Always glad to meet.
Alright, and then in my turn, they've got enough mana. I'm just going to cycle this. See what happens. Depopulates. Not the end of the world. Yeah, my turn. Let's go ahead and pay 2 life. We've got 9 mana. Nissa costs 3. Let's go ahead and draw a card first, just to say we did.
We need to move quickly.
Dovin's Veto is solid. Okay, so we're going to Nissa. Dovin's Veto. Endless Detour. They've only got 1 mana untapped, so ain't no thing. Boom. +1 on a breeding pool. +1 on a breeding pool.
Remember
Combat. Let's go to attackers. Kill that. Attack you.
years of training for this.
End turn, and then we'll get the other breeding pool untapped, and let's grab a Castle Ardenvale. My turn. Oh, what am I doing? That's not a Sparrows. Let's see. Undo that. Okay, that's fine. My turn. For some reason I thought this was a Sparrows headquarters. Let's draw a card.
No time for a break.
Growth Spiral ain't bad. Play Glacial Fortress as my land for turn. Going to put a +1/+1 counter on my flyer. Go to combat. I expect them to try to block with the Hall of Storm Giants. I have numerous ways to deal with that. Sell the wreckage? No. Oh, they're making a 1/1 token. To that I say, no. Ta-da! Good game. That was one game in this match. Holy mackerel, was that grindy. Okay, so here, Mystical Disputes come in. Hullbreaker Horror comes in, which means Kaheera has to come out. Narsets come in. And so, in this case, probably want to go down the Depopulates and the Farewell. Then we can go down probably Wandering Emperor like that. Wandering Emperor did a lot of work that game, so it's hard taking her down, but she's like in a world where they're about to, tune their deck she does the least of the walkers we have. And so I don't necessarily know that's correct taking her out, but it feels like the thing that's going to get me the most edge here. I could be wrong about that, but we'll see. And honestly, like the Narsets are really good, especially if I can dig for them. Are they better than the Wandering Emperor? So like in games when I'm in the driver's seat like I was last game, then the Wandering Emperor is just amazing. If I'm not in the driver's seat, then she just feels like playing from the back foot because, you know, otherwise like they really kind of don't care about what I'm doing. So this hand isn't amazing, but it is decent. And so, I mean, we've got a way to counter something early. We've got 2 redraws, like, and we're going to basically ramp real fast with it. I'm going to keep it. We're going to see what happens. We're up a game. We don't have a ton to lose. I'm going to give it a shot. Let's go ahead and breeding pool. Interest tapped. I want to actually leave the Censor up to use in the short term and see what we can get from that. Right. Pay 2 life for the Hallowed Fountain and pass. Okay. Throw a spiral. Alright. Fine. If that's what they're mystical disputing, then I am totally okay with that. Let's try this again. My opponent is thinking very hard about it. Alright, just spend all your mystical disputes. Awesome. I do not care. Go for it. So I'm not ramping ahead of them, but I've gotten 2 mystical disputes out of their hand so far, so I'm feeling good. And are they missing a land drop? Ooh, they're missing a land drop. So my options here, I can Memory Deluge. If they've got a counter spell, then they kind of get ahead on that. I'm going to Shark Typhoon, just make it 2/2, draw a card. Since they can't do anything about that, unless they've somehow managed to bring in Stifle. I mean, I guess they could have Farewell, or not Farewell, March of Otherworldly Light, but you know, honestly, if that's what they're choosing to use their time for, then so be it. I'm gonna put this in tapped. Try to attack. Damage. Yep. And turn. Otawara is potentially useful here. Deluge, I will happily force spike that. They drew the land. Good for them. Another march here is probably a bit overkill. So the fact that they burned these mystical disputes early on the way they did makes me think either their hand is like overloaded on counter spells, or it either has to be entirely counterspelled or no counter spells. Like there's no in between, because like either they had so many that they could afford to burn them like this, or like they've just used them all. In this case, like, since I can make a 1/1 at the end of their turn, I can cast Memory Deluge. I think I'm just gonna sit and not throw Teferi, into the end zone. If they want to exile my shark here, then fine.
Now you've done it. Hat's coming off.
But yeah, I just don't want to. I don't feel the need to risk Teferi for next to nothing because we actually don't have a ton of threats here. If they want to use the Wandering Emperor's -2 on a 2/2 shark, then okay, fine. In turn. Wish this could hit Planeswalkers. That would be good. I guess there's an argument for Fateful Absence in this deck, but
Keep watch
we'll
for
see.
intruders.
Let's go ahead and see if we can Memory Deluge. Test of Talents. Okay. Yeah, go for it. You got me. Luckily, I've only got 2 of those in the deck, so it was not the best thing you could have gotten. Although they get to see my hand now, so I'm curious what they're sitting on, because like they were real liberal with Mystical Dispute. Given that I'm not really hiding anything now, let's go ahead and just nuke this samurai. So they know about Teferi. I'm curious if they have anything to do about it. In either way, I get to leave up 1 mana for March, whether or not that matters. Let's give Nissa a try, see what happens. Okay. We've only got 10 minutes left. This has been such a long match. We've got their own Teferi. Okay.
I won't hide from the keep up the pace.
And 1 random card from the top of their deck. We've got 2 Teferis and 1 random card from the top of our deck.
Trust me.
So this is interesting. I think actually the answer here, since they don't have a creature land, is just tuck their Teferi and play this game. Because 1 random card from the top of my deck could be useful, but realistically, who knows if it's actually going to do anything. And worst case scenario, can still March here. Okay. Memory Deluge. They tapped out to do that main phase because, yeah, they did. Alright, let's go ahead and plus. Hydroid Krasis is here is great, especially considering they tapped out. Let's play this. We've got 7 mana. Say let's spend it. YOLO. Untap 2 lands. I see 2 lands. I assume they have removal, but March of Otherworldly Light. Yeah, that's fine. At least I got to draw cards and gain life, so I'll take it. They could have done that on my turn, but they chose not to, so good for them. There's a Teferi. Are they going to steal my move? Tuck my Teferi? No, they're not. Let's go Spiral now. Castle.
Keep up the pace.
Neat.
Suppose that's how it was meant to
Endless detour. Okay, well. Keep on keeping on. You can redraw your Teferi if you like. And now we've got enough mana to Endless Detour. We can crack a clue. Go from there. Let's Hallowed the Moon again. They've suddenly gotten very liberal with the emotes. They're going to cast Shark Typhoon. I would like to say, draw it again.
You know what? I'm not.
Seems good. 3, 6, 9. It's going to cost them 3, so they'll be able to deal with it either way. Let's. They're out of cards in hand, so like that was a bold move they did there. Since we're going to get to untap anyway, I'm going to go ahead and activate this. Resolve. Dovin's Veto is exactly what I wanted to see there. In turn, because now they are not doing great mana-wise. Did they wise up to how you're really supposed to use that card? I would rather use this on a Teferi anyway, so let's go with that. Yeah, my turn. Express headquarters is not bad.
Hold that thought.
Let's detour. Actually, I'm gonna leave this up to cycle. I think that's the right call. I can actually just cycle it now. Let's do that. Try another card. Another March is a little underwhelming. Almost as underwhelming as beating them down with a 1/1. Come at me, bro. Make the biggest shark you've ever seen. Yeah, resolve. Pay 0, confirm 0, submit 0, shoot. Resolve. And turn, then untap, and untap. This time I say no. You shall not pass. What do you got? So I'm going to blow them a little kiss. They've been very generous with all their nicing, so. Gonna draw another card.
No time.
This Mystical Dispute's not going to be super helpful, unfortunately. Drop a Breeding Pool. And let's go ahead and just draw with this. Hoped for better. And then we've got 5 mana up. Let's just end turn. I'll cycle the Censor on their turn on the off chance that ends up being relevant. Otherwise here, Cycles now. Nissa's good. I like Nissa. And then, yeah, March, or Mystical Dispute's not going to do anything right now,
I
but...
know 88 ways to defeat.
Bolt?
Pick one.
I guess I could have Endless Detoured it, so there's that.
Prepare.
Dovin's Veto. Now I'm glad I kept the Endless Detour. Like, I guess I had thought of it, but in reality here, like, I just need to get things done. And then, my turn. Let's plus.
Oh,
Oh, that was stupid. I should not have done it that way. But let's go ahead and do this. They're going to Dovin's Veto. And I'm going to Endless Detour the Dovin's Veto. They've got double Dovin's Veto. Okay, well, that happened. Actually works out okay for them because they get to redraw the Dovin's Veto next turn, so let's go ahead and make Narset marginally less useful.
Fury will only
And
lead
end
you
turn. 2. My turn. Yep. Combat. Uno. Dos. They do not have any creature lands up, so this is safe.
Such violence.
Now we'll draw some cards.
keep up the pace.
There's a Narset. Oh. How... Let's just go ahead and bait out the Dovin's Veto. Get rid of it now. I imagine that they'll use it here. Why wouldn't they? Yep. End turn. I know I'm going to get ripped in the comments for burning that Narset right there, but like realistically, we're not doing too bad. Just getting that Veto out of their hand now is worth it, and we have plenty answers to that Hall of the Storm Giants. Like, I'm not worried right now. It's going to take a long time to kill them with what we've got to work with, but I do believe we'll kill them. Oh, double Mystical Dispute. It keeps getting better.
We need to move quickly.
Okay. Breeding Pool, enters tapped. Go to combat. And eventually we'll get to ultimate this Teferi. That's coming up soon, I hope. Maybe. I'll attack. Having 2 Mystical Disputes is pretty sweet. There's a chance that we can use both of them at once. And then that's when things get crazy. Yeah, I mean, I criticize them for burning those Mystical Disputes early in the game, but like, I guess I kind of look a little dumb with them sitting in hand right now, so I'll accept whatever criticism is given to me. Yeah, come at me. Let's go to combat. Let's do attackers. I want to see it tapped so that they have as little mana available as possible in case what they've got here is meaningful. X is 0, confirm 0, submit 0, target. Yes. Resolve, auto pay. There we go. Alright, and they had a land. It was not a land that worries me greatly. Let's make another dude. This is maybe the slowest beatdown I've ever had. Draw a card.
Hurry.
Growth Spiral is not awful. Let's go to combat. Attack 4. And then just pass. Can untap Hall of the Storm Giants. Field of Ruin is a solid answer to the Hall of the Storm Giants. I will give them that. Let's go Spiral. Finally cast the last one of those. Yeah, we get to ramp. We've got 10 mana available, so that actually is enough. You know what? I'm trying to decide whether to put it on. I'm going to put it on untapped and just like hope that the math works out well for me. So I want to see if I can create 2 tokens. And I do think... Yeah, there we go. Alright, so I did need to put that on play untapped, but I have so much life I don't actually care. Draw a card. The next turn he turns into a mad exile and machine.
We need to move quickly.
We've only got a minute left in this game, so I gotta close this out. They're probably playing for the timer at this point. Gotta like have as few things as possible. I've gotta play faster. One. There. Yeah, resolve. I'm not gonna tap it because it is what it is. Submit. Combat. I've got a minute 11 to deal 6 damage to him. Fortunately, a single 1/1 is not going to save you, my friend. But it is going to make me click a whole bunch more things. There we go. GG. Alright, and welcome back for the wrap-up on Bant Control in Explorer. So what did we learn this week? We learned that Bant is actually pretty good, and in best of 3, I was really happy with how the sideboard came together. We got to see a couple different matchups, albeit with our opponents kind of scooping after Game 1 or during Game 2, so, you know, I am happy with how I expected them to work, but you know, obviously our opponents had different plans for how they wanted to spend their time, so there is with that. You know, I really like what happened here. Censor ended up being relevant at least one time, and that's more than Jawari Disruption tends to be, so I'll go ahead and call that a win. Endless Detour was really excellent. We got to see it in the control matchup multiple times, answering Dovin vetoes that our opponent very clearly expected to go through. And so having a way to just force our opponent through with that is really great. Now, the downside of having those things go back to our opponent's top of deck, you know, that's a bit of a pain. So like there was that one case where they had 2 Dovin's vetoes, and so like the first one got detoured back to the top of their deck, and then the second one accomplished the original goal. And so, you know, that's frustrating, but because they end up with another one. But you know, at the end of the day, it's one of the few things that couldn't get around that situation. In that, you know, if they didn't have the second Dovin's veto, this is pretty much the only thing that could actually get us out there. Growth Spiral is really great. We have enough hands in this deck that have excess lands in them, and getting to dump them out so that we get that early resource advantage. It's really important to getting to our wraths fast enough in the creature decks. It's also really important for just breaking the symmetry in the control mirrors, because, you know, this deck, the green splash, means it ends up being the beatdown more often than the usual decks I play. And that's not necessarily because it's like launching creatures, but because in those sort of like, gunslinger standoffs where we're trying to figure out who's going to shoot first, it's a lot easy to take the first shot when you've got 2 extra lands relative to your opponent. And so Growth Spiral letting us get just a little bit further makes that a lot more palatable because, being able to leave up Dovin's Veto after casting something, in our turn is really, really helpful. And so the mantra of whoever taps out first loses still tends to hold true in Explorer from my experience in the control mirrors. And so Growth Spiral helps us sort of break that, and that we can still cast our spells on time, but not be the first one to tap out. And so obviously that's a mnemonic that you want to take too far, but this is a pretty significant part of why Bant is different from Azorius. It's different from Esper in ways that are like meaningful. Hydroid Krasis was awesome. Unfortunately, he's a little bit too easy to march, so it didn't stick around too often, but even when he gets removed, you still get to draw some cards, gain some life. I was never sad to cast it even when it died immediately, and then just having, on the few cases where a gigantic flying trampling threat just stuck around, it was just pretty choice. The last sort of major change in the Bant build was Nissa Who Shakes the World. Didn't come up as often as I'd like, but the times that she did come down, she demanded an answer quickly enough that it was still really great seeing her on the battlefield. This deck, it needs a basic forest. I realize, like, the fact that we have a plains and an island. Do we even have an island? Yeah, we have one island. It needs a basic forest because we had a case where we only had 2 things with forest types on them, and then someone fielded ruined one of them, and suddenly like Nissa's static is a lot less great if you just happen to not have a ton of forests on the battlefield. So that is a consideration, but even with that being said, just the fact that she can animate 3/3s with vigilance that tap for mana coincidentally is pretty darn strong. So from that perspective, she's not as strong in this deck as she could be if we were like really going all in on green, but she's still a pretty big threat and she makes people answer her. In the sideboard, we saw things like Ether Gust and Mystical Dispute come into play. I didn't really draw Hullbreaker Horror. We didn't have a good opportunity to bring in Yasharn, but being able to sort of swap into these sort of more anti-control cards like Narset in games 2 and 3 is really useful here. And so I'm sure that there are other things that we will end up wanting. I actually am kind of looking at this at a glance, and I'm wondering, based on what's in the metagame, whether replacing the Damping Spheres with Authority of the Consuls makes sense. Because against a lot of the aggro decks, it just really neuters them, and it turns off a lot of the things that like Greasefang want to do. And if Wynota ever comes back, it kind of makes that a little bit less problematic in some ways. And so that would be one thing I would sort of keep in mind, but I'm pretty happy with here. The Kaheera was vestigial. We knew she was vestigial. I think I brought her in and cast her once, and so it's nice that when you are playing the Beat Town or you have made that pivot, that you just always have a 3/2 on hand. So I'm not sad that she's there, and I don't think our sideboard spots are so heavily contested that I'm worried about that. The real question is, like, would this be better as an 80 card deck with Yorion? And maybe, but honestly, like I like the feel of 60 card decks a lot better than the Yorion decks, and that's not because Yorion's bad. Yorion is very, very good, but like things like Growth Spiral and cycling cards and whatnot feel a lot more impactful when you're digging through 20 fewer cards, and then you get to do things like have Kaheera on hand to just drop in if you need her. But anyway, that is Bant Control. Please, if you like the deck, please give us a thumb up. And if you like what we're doing here, putting out new control decks every single week, please consider subscribing. I try to get pretty creative with these. Like, I haven't seen Bant Control getting really any attention in Explorer yet. Last week I did mono red control, and it maybe was not the sort of tier 1 deck of all time, but it was a heck of a lot of fun. And so we try to get creative here. We try to learn as much as we can during these games and try to understand the metagame. And so if you want to be a part of that, please consider subscribing. It means a lot to me, again, as a new creator. With that, I will pass it off to you to go and bant your way to victory on your own time, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.
Searching for greatness in a sea of the dying and shameless. A sea of the aimless. I don't wanna be one of the nameless.